Welcome, everybody, to another Oshkosh edition of the Flying Midwest Podcast. We're going to be hanging out with AOPA today, asking some questions about some of the services that they've got available, their Learning to Fly program, and getting an update from Kyle Lewis over here about what's going on in the Great Lakes region. So, we are at Oshkosh. It's day 4 for us out here. We've had just a ton of fun covering all sorts of different things, listening to that guy drive by on some sort of lift, making a lot of beeping noises while we're trying to record. So,
just another day in the life at Oshkosh.
And you know, part of this is we want the ambiance, but that's not. I was looking for airplane noises, not construction noises.
I think he hijacked that thing.
We should call EAA police. We need to get into stories about that if you want to talk about it. But maybe not. Too soon. It's too fresh. I'll just leave it at this. The EAA police have backed down as far as I've heard on Kyle Lewis, so he's in the clear. He can show his face again. There's a long story behind it we won't get into. We'll just leave you guessing on what that could possibly be that would send the EAA police after Kyle. So,
without further ado, welcome back, Kyle.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So how's your Oshkosh experience been this year?
So this is my 23rd Oshkosh Airventure in a row. I actually flew up in 2020, which is another long story, but I did land at Oshkosh, went to Friar Tuck's, and made a couple stops and flew back all in one day. So that was my 2020 Airventure experience.
How do you do that all in one day?
So I live in Southern Ohio.
Yeah.
And my hangar neighbor, he was wanting to fly somewhere. And
I got a great idea.
I said, have you ever been to Wisconsin? And it was actually during Airventure, the week that Airventure would have occurred.
Oh, and 2020.
Yeah,
Never mind.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah. So we did we did the up and back, and made a day trip out of it. And he had never been to Wisconsin, so he got the little experience of Oshkosh. So
you hear the jokes all the time about create your own Airventure, but now you literally did that. In 2020.
We did, yeah, and it included all the highlights. You know, cheese curds, a new Glarus, spotted cow, of course, and Friar Tuck's. So that must have been what the early days of Airventure were like.
Yeah.
Looking back in time, it must have been very basic. But no, this year it's been hot and humid. So
yes, it has.
That's about every third year. I think it's like this. We just all forget it, and it's like, where did this come from? Oh, wait, it's July.
Yeah, it's July in Wisconsin.
Yeah, July in Wisconsin. So, but no, it's been good. We've been busy here at the AOPA tent. I've talked to a lot of members about airport issues. FAA reauthorization of Mosaic are big topics this week. So, a lot of really good conversations. And obviously, we're here the rest of the week.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's been, I don't know, a couple months since we talked to you. So what are some updates from around this region that you have for us?
So I'll start. Top line is our legislative focus at the state level. So this airports and state advocacy team. It was a very busy spring in the legislative season at the state level. My big push will actually be coming this fall. Ohio and Michigan are still in session. They're on recess right now, but they're gearing up for a fall session, and we're expecting to have legislation in both states. So in Ohio, a bill was introduced just a few weeks ago, about a month ago actually, on the tall structure permitting in the state. And the reason this is important, it's really about airport and airspace protection. Not to get into too much detail, but the FAA does not issue construction permits for tall structures, wind turbines, cell towers, etc. Okay. The FAA delegates that out to local and state law. And the state law in Ohio is fairly old on this. It's outdated. So this will bring that state law in line with CFR Part 77, which is the TERPs, instrument approaches, and all that, which gets very complicated. So we're working on that actually right now with some of the state reps that are bill sponsors, doing some education sessions with the committee. There's now an aviation committee in Ohio. I think one of the only states, if not the only state, that has a specific aerospace and aviation committee in the State House. So looking forward to working with that committee on getting this legislation passed. In Michigan, not a lot of detail yet, but some aeronautics code updates. And this could, from airport licensing to aircraft registrations, a whole gamut of things. The draft bill has not been released yet. We're expecting that in the next few weeks to, month for the fall session. So that's what I'll be working on this fall. And also with our Airport Support Network program, I have well over 400 volunteers in the region now,
Oh, that's great.
which is great. I think there's roughly public use airports in the region, about 860
Okay.
on the last count. So, having 50% of those
Yeah.
is a really good number, because some of these strips are even agricultural strips, that are open to the public, or even small municipal airports. But for the most part, nationwide, out of 3,300 NIPIAS airports, we have 2,200 ASN volunteers at NIPIAS airports. So we're very excited to have that program back up and robust.
Fantastic. So on last episode we had with you, we talked about some initiatives going on with a few different airports. So can you give us some updates on those?
Yeah, so the two biggest in my region that closure threats. So those are our top line defense issues. So Burke Lakefront in Cleveland. There were two studies that have been commissioned. One study was on the regulatory process to close the airport. The city council commissioned this study through a consulting engineering firm. And just to be blunt, they could have asked the FAA and got the information for free. The first study is back in the hands of city council. I'm sure they're reviewing it. It has not been released to the public yet. The second study, which was alternative land uses of the airport property, that's still ongoing. I think that's expected to come back in early fall, September, maybe October. But once those studies are released to the public, we'll get our hands on them, kind of digest what was said. But for right now, the conversation on closing the airport seems to have tapered off, with rhetoric coming out of the mayor's office. So we're still monitoring it. And obviously, we keep reaching out to the mayor's office. We keep reaching out to local groups like the East Central Ohio Pilot Association for support on this issue, and really monitoring closely. The other issue, also Ohio, is the Toledo Executive Airport. This was after, I think, our first interview. This issue came up.
Okay.
This was in late March. I got a phone call from some members that the mayor, actually in his State of the City address, one of his initiatives was to close the airport and build a electric vehicle battery factory on the property, which we all have our own opinion on the electric vehicle front, but the airport is not the best use for that kind of facility. The airport is federally obligated, and the mayor had no idea that there was a process to even close the airport. So we did some fact-finding. We did a FOIA request on any emails between the FAA and the city and the Port Authority, just to kind of get a grasp on how deep they have looked into this issue. And in our advocacy work, public information is a very good leverage. A lot of people don't like to do that because they think they're hindering something or they're going to come after people, but it's your right as a citizen to take a look at what's going on with your dollars or with your elected officials. So we use that tool quite a bit, public record requests, because every now and then you find a very good gold nugget of information to further our advocacy work. So we did that. We did find that the city had contacted the FAA, and the FAA had basically said, without being too blunt, we would not support closing this airport. And I know they had further conversations in person with the FAA, and that conversation has also been dropped. And AOPA did write a letter in support of that airport. There's also a lot of local support from the township the airport sits in, operators at the airport, corporate operators that use Toledo Executive. So that conversation has also tapered off on the closure front. So that was kind of a flash in the pan, but that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
and that's what our airport support network is here for, is to give us a heads up on these issues, be able to get in front of them before it's too late in some cases. But yeah, other states, airport issue wise, really working with state DOTs on any updates with their state aviation system planning. And I attend, out of my 8 states, I attend, 4 or 5 state DOT conferences or airport manager conferences every year, just to keep tabs on the network that I have built here in the region, and also updates within the state as far as funding changes. Indiana got a bump in funding in this last legislative round, which is very good news. Marty Blake, the state DOT director, does an excellent job in Indiana, and there's some really fine airports in Indiana as well. So that's kind of the regional outlook. Going into this fall, Ohio is still working on their state aviation system plan, and AOPA is on their public advisory committee or technical advisory committee. So that project is getting up and running. But also in Michigan, they're doing a legislative task force for this aeronautics code update that I've been attending some meetings for. So all good stuff, keeping us very busy.
Yeah.
And looking forward to this fall.
Great.
Yeah, we love to see it. It's great that you guys advocate for those small airports. Sometimes they just, I'm sure, as you know, but as you guys, our listeners may not know, smaller airports and small communities may not have that kind of support. So it's vital that, it's vital what you guys do, what you do. So thank you for doing that.
Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and not only, thank you for all that you do with AOPA and advocating for, pilots and airports everywhere, but thank you for helping us with the opportunities that we've had here with AOPA over the course of this week, helping to get some interviews arranged, helping us to have some humor within this week with my jokes about the EAA police. It's been a blast, and it's been really great connecting with you again.
Well, I appreciate everything you guys are doing because there's some print publications, there's some social media things, but I think this venue is a very good connection to our membership. It's a very good connection to aviation. I'm glad you guys are here at Airventure and highlighting AOPA because we are doing quite a bit across all lines of business for our membership. And, I would take the opportunity to thank EAA, of course, for hosting this amazing show. And we're just happy to be part of it, even if we might end up in handcuffs by the end of the week. When I say we, I mean me.
Yeah, just you. But we offered you EAA bail money. So.
Well, yeah, but that's like monopoly money here, right?
Well, but
it's only good in the
out of EAA jail, then
it's only good in the museum. So, it was a very minor infraction, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I also want to comment on your sunglasses. They're very sharp. I like the little design with the
Flying Tigers. I have matching underwear.
Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
and socks.
And socks.
And socks.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're decked out.
Decked out.
It's really all about representing aviation in every possible way here at Airventure.
You see some mighty fine things here at Airventure.
Well, some things we don't want to see.
That is true. After hours, Airventure could be its own thing.
That's a pay-per-view, not podcast-worthy subjects.
Yeah. After hours, Airventure is. Oh wow. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of airshow zombies around here.
Yeah.
These are just the attendees that are just kind of staring in the sky all day, and they've got that really unique sunburn, which is just their face, right?
Yeah.
And but no, it's a lot of fun.
They made a comment at the air show yesterday about people with burnt tonsils because they're like staring up the sky, airplanes. So their tonsils get sunburned.
Yeah. I did have somebody ask me if this was the boat show.
Come on.
Yeah.
Where do you see a boat here?
Well,
there's a seaplane.
There's a few. There are a few boats.
All right. Well, I haven't looked that close for the boats.
One year, just a funny story. One year, when I was still coming as a spectator, which I think we're all spectators even when we're here working, in the campground, which Camp Scholler, again, could be an entirely other podcast of just critiquing campsites. Literally one of the big houseboats.
Okay.
That was their camper for the weekend. Yeah. They towed it in, and they had like a ladder to get up in it because generally it floats in the water, right? But it's like 18 feet tall.
Oh, for sure.
And that party barge right in the campground.
So for your minor infraction, the EAA police was going to come after you, but you can park a houseboat in camping, and they don't care.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could tow your house.
Okay.
Here.
Well, I'm not going to try that. That's very inconvenient.
They did.
Yes.
There you go.
A mini
they did. It was the log cabin. Yeah.
Well,
I saw that.
We're not talking like a family-sized residential home. We're talking it's a tiny house, right?
Yeah.
It's still a house.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Silly. I don't know if it's going to be heard,
but no, I think it's been a great Airventure here at Oshkosh.
Airplane, sorry.
Big round engine airplane flying over. I was lucky enough to be able to fly in, landed right on the purple dot. So very, very excited about that. Because then after that, all the pressure's off for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Once and
because everyone's watching your landings.
Well, I got here Friday morning, so it was just the dedicated folks are out there watching.
Yeah.
Did you see the people with signs?
I did.
Did you get rated? What was your score?
9.7.
9.7. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the 0.3.
It's out of.
It must be my parking skills
But I think
for the 0.3. Took 0.7 off.
They didn't tell you the scale's out of 100 though.
Oh. Oh.
Right across the bow with that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. That's all right. That's all right.
Well, thank you again so much for your time, Kyle. We really appreciate you coming back on. And
anytime.
We're going to move on to our next segment.
Okay, enjoy. Thanks, everybody.
Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we would like to introduce Cade, who's part of the AOPA medical program. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Anything I can do to help?
Currently, no. We're not doing that. Thank you. So can you give us a little background about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work in the medical certification division here in AOPA. I have a pretty extensive medical background, and kind of just a brief, really quick overview of what we do with AOPA is on the medical side at least, is anything that has to do with your medical certification standards, whether that's dealing with the FAA, helping gather paperwork, what conditions are disqualifying, why they're disqualifying, how you can kind of not necessarily circumvent, but how you can prepare for what that process is going to take through the FAA. We also obviously handle a lot of basic med as well. That's just quick 30,000 foot view of kind of what we do.
So, how do you get access to this medical service?
So, just as a basic AOPA member, so at our regular base membership, you can call in and speak to one of us in the office. There are only a handful of us that work in the medical division, so just regular membership, you can call and talk to us. We can have a conversation, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, it doesn't matter. If it gets more in depth, where we need to follow something through the FAA, or you want us to reach out to the FAA on your behalf, that comes as part of our pilot protection services basic. So the first level of pilot protection services allows us to kind of walk through the FAA process with you should you be deferred or denied or something to that effect. One more step up from that as part of our pilot protection services plus level of membership is if you're in a deferral process or in a position where the FAA has sent you a request for additional information for a medical condition, you can send your documents to us. One of our senior reviewers, which is myself, will sit down and go through your actual medical documentation, so your medical records line by line, just as though the FAA would. We look for conditions that would be disqualifying that maybe weren't disclosed, lab values that the FAA isn't going to like, just medications that we know the FAA isn't going to like, anything that could be a potential hiccup or slow down the process with getting an AI letter taken care of and a medical certification issued, whether it be a special issuance or a regular medical. We just kind of guide through that process.
So in addition to those services that you provide, are there advocacy things that you guys are doing in the background with the FAA, or?
Yeah, so that's kind of a twofold question to answer. So on the medical certification side, we don't do a lot of the in Washington, D.C. kind of advocacy. Our director is pretty plugged into the FAA. However, for advocacy specifically, that all gets deferred to our government affairs.
Oh, sure.
So they do, if there needs to be a significant policy change or something to that effect, that goes through the government affairs. Now, we have conversations with the FAA often and bounce the ideas back and forth and, say just kind of casual conversations where we say, hey, let's take a look at this, or let's talk about this medication a little bit more in depth and see what we can do about maybe changing some of the rules or something to that effect. But as far as legitimate government advocacy, that goes through our advocacy department.
Still something that obviously AOPA is involved in.
Oh, absolutely.
Just not this branch
just
of it.
Correct. Yeah. So Basic Med is a prime example of that. We advocated, our government affairs specifically advocated for the introduction and implementation of Basic Med. So that's probably our pride and joy on the medical certification division, and I'm sure the government's very proud of that as well. But that's a prime example of the advocacy that we do, is not necessarily lowering the standards, but making different avenues for pilots to be able to get certified.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about Basic Med. Is that something that you offer additional services for if you're not a member of AOPA, if you're working under Basic Med, or how does that work for you guys?
Correct, yeah. So to call in and get advice on Basic Med, whether it be how to go through the process, is my health condition disqualifying, it was my last medical that I had, does it fall into the correct category to make me valid for Basic Med? To get those kinds of questions answers, you do not have to be a AOPA member, as well as we obviously maintain one of the Basic Med courses, us in the Mayo Clinic. So to do that course, you don't have to be an AOPA member. To get tech support for that course, you don't have to be an AOPA member. Anything that has to do with Basic Med, until we start getting into, well, this is disqualifying for Basic Med, now we got to start talking about going back to get a third-class medical.
Sure.
Anything that, before that happens, you don't have to be an AOPA member to take advantage of.
Okay.
Well, that sounds like a fantastic resource. I know Basic Med is getting more popular and popular by the year, so that's really awesome. What is AOPA Medical working on now?
So the biggest thing that we do kind of as a revolving, we're working on continuously is the FAA is constantly updating qualification standards, medications that they allow, things like that effect. Obviously, there's been huge mental health changes. So we maintain databases of medications, but what we really are working on and what we really want to press is how do we best prepare people for the process that they're possibly going to have to deal with for the FAA. So that's kind of our revolving what are we working on, because we're constantly working on that. We want to make sure that we have the best path forward for pilots to get certified, and we need to have the most knowledge so that we can then impart that on our aviation community, specifically general aviation community. So, for instance, we come to events like this and we go to seminars and we educate ourselves. We go to the same kind of seminars that AMEs go to. So when your AME, knows something, we're going to know it too because we go to the same seminars that they go to.
Okay.
So we're just, while mostly we're just constantly making sure that we're as up to speed as we can possibly be so that our members are up to speed on as they can.
Is there something that you guys would see as like the biggest issue that people bring to you for advice or information?
Yeah, and specifically, currently, our biggest, I would say, 50% of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis is, I'm going to call it an epidemic, is the epidemic of ADHD diagnoses in the country.
Yep.
Your specific opinions on whether or not those ADHD diagnoses are real or not, that's kind of another topic altogether. But as a child of the 90s or late 80s and the 90s myself, I can tell you that when I was growing up, doctors were handing out ADHD medications and ADHD diagnoses like they were candy.
Sure.
And it's kind of the same today. I think that trend has kind of fallen off a little bit. But our probably biggest subsection of people that we deal with the exception of older pilots on basic med, is younger pilots who are just getting involved in aviation that either have a diagnosis of ADHD previously, anxiety previously, depression previously. And so that's a difficult task to try and tackle, getting those pilots approved. Not impossible by any means. And there are potentially some changes coming down the pipeline. There were previously some significant changes that happened. So that is the bulk of what I do on a day-to-day basis, I would say, is kind of help people through the process with some sort of mental health diagnosis.
So that's a good segue for one of the other questions that we have as far as the mental health stuff. So the FAA recently approved some additional medications for mental health type of diagnoses, as well as talk about maybe approving more. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Right, yeah. So previously there were 4 SSRIs that were allowed as medications that you could take for either depression or anxiety or a few other diagnoses, mostly depression and anxiety. Just recently, the FAA approved Wellbutrin extended release and sustained release, and that's an important distinction to make while I have an audience. Is just Wellbutrin is not approved. So if you're just taking standard everyday run-of-the-mill Wellbutrin, that is not an approved medication. It must be extended release or sustained release, which is a less common medication. Not a lot of people are on it. So there was kind of an influx of people saying, whoa, I'm taking Wellbutrin, now I can get certified. Well, yes and no. And the vast majority of them fell into the category of they're taking the wrong kind of Wellbutrin.
Okay.
I have heard, and this is a lot of this is, just we've heard and may or may not come to fruition, but we have heard that the FAA is looking at additional medications. I don't know what they are. I don't know what class of drug they are. I just know that they involve mental health in some capacity, but their FAA is the beauty of particularly Dr. Northrup, who's the federal air surgeon, is that she's very much abreast of the issues that society is facing in terms of, stressors and, anguish and mental health, and much more so than the FAA was kind of as lenient on 30 years ago. There's been a lot more topics on opening up the discussion between pilots and the FAA and their physicians about the treatment of mental health, which I think is a phenomenal thing because it's a huge societal issue is dealing with mental health. And so Dr. Northrup, I think, she's on the pilot side here. It's just a matter of getting the policies in place, working through the FAA system. So it's going in the right direction. Things just take time.
Sure.
So that's really encouraging to have somebody that's in government that's on our side. I feel like for many, many, many years, and I don't think it's a big secret, pilots have felt like they can't say anything to anyone, doctors or otherwise, for fear of losing their medical and losing their entire career. And nowadays with aviation, one, being so expensive, and two, mental health being such a prevalent thing in society, and with COVID and everything, I think that's really great that we have somebody there who's important and also on our side for that. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah, and I think you hit that perfectly on the head. Is what general aviation pilots has lacked is an advocacy or an advocate in the FAA. And, it's still kind of, and I'm a pilot myself, so it's still kind of the mentality that the FAA is the boogeyman. They're out to get you. And this, specifically on the medical side, I think that, that was really thought of as the case 10, 20, 15 years ago. But that's changing for the better. It's still, you still got to keep people safe in the air. Yeah. And the whole point of them is to keep the national airspace system safe and effective. And there's still there's still some things that are going to be hard nosed, and they're never not going to be hard nosed probably. But the fact that we have a physician at the highest level in the FAA that really is looking out for general aviation, I think is a huge thing for us as far as keeping GA alive, and not even alive as younger pilots come up, keeping GA growing. Yeah,
great points. So if someone wants to get a hold of you guys to take advantage of your services, how would they go about doing that?
Well, so we have AOPA.org. You just navigate to medical resources on that, or they can call us at any time. It's 1-800-872-2672 is the phone number. If they're not a member, they have to go through a little bit more kind of legroom to get to somebody, just because we obviously cater to members.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible to get through to us specifically as a non-member, particularly, as I said, if you have a basic med question. So the easiest way to get a question addressed and to kind of understand what more you may need is just give us a call. We're there, 8:30 to typically 6 Eastern time, Monday through Friday. Someone's always going to pick up the phone. And the beauty of AOPA is that we're here for GA, we're here for the members, we're here for the pilots. So, we're never going to blow anybody off, even if they're not a member. I'm not going to, if somebody calls in and say, hey, I have a question about ADHD, but I'm not a member, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to talk to you until you're a member.
Sure.
I'm going to at least get somebody going, because, money's money. And even though, in my opinion, an AOPA membership is pennies compared to what things in GA cost.
Right.
But we're never going to turn somebody away, and at least not get them started in the right direction just because they're not an AOPA member. So easiest thing they can do is just pick up the phone and call us.
Great.
I think that's really swell. There's not a lot of, I feel like, I don't want to say companies, but organizations even, everything's a lot really money driven these days. It's really great that you guys will at least give everybody, anybody the time of day and the respect of just pointing them in the right direction. It's really awesome, and it speaks to how passionate and driven you are to actually getting pilots in the system and helping them out. So thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we hit it here?
No, well, not necessarily. Just the kind of parting wisdom I will give is that I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who have made a decision without some guidance, whether that be trying to switch to basic med, or starting a medication, or going to the doctor looking for a specific diagnosis. That they've gone down that road before they've gotten some kind of guidance.
Sure.
And we see this particularly with basic med. Is someone will be a little bit confused on the process, and they'll say, they'll call us and they'll say, well, I already went to the AME and I already filled out MedExpress and I already got deferred. Well, you should have called me first, because you probably didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
So the biggest piece of advice I can give someone who's kind of thinking about going down that process, just starting out in flying, and you're going to get their first medical, is give us a call and run everything through us first before you make a decision that you may regret.
Well, we really appreciate you sitting down with us, talking to us about the medical services AOPA has available for folks, and we hope you enjoy the rest of Oshkosh.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you all.
So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you all.
Dan, welcome to the Flying Midwest podcast. Thanks for coming on and talking to us about some of the things AOPA has got going on with your You Can Fly programs.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I mean, it's awesome being back at OSH. I'm actually grew up about an hour and a half south here in Waukesha, so not only do I get to come back and hang out with my family and friends that I grew up with, but I get to be with my aviation family here at OSH. It truly is an amazing celebration of aviation. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been Oh, man, the Super Guppy's making another pass.
That is spectacular.
Too bad no one else can see it, except for us and anyone else at OSH.
That seems to be defying all logic.
I know, it shouldn't be flying, but there it is.
It's like Holmesies.
And helicopters.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's amazing. Amazing technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to talk to you a bit about those programs, but
Great.
tell us a little bit about your background first.
Yeah, sure. Well, like I said, I grew up about an hour and a half south in Waukesha County, and growing up as a kid, I got turned on by aviation by watching radio-controlled gliders flying in the park near my house. So that was my exposure to general aviation, was just seeing the beauty and the coolness of those gliders flying. It was something that always stuck with me. So I never really had aspirations to be an airline pilot or a professional pilot, though you never know. Could always happen. There's lots of opportunity in general aviation. But that seed was planted, and that the flying bug was established. And so I just got to a point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm going to do it. So I went and got my private license, my certificate. I got my instrument rating, and ever since I've just been loving flying general aviation for fun. And now I get to do it as part of my job as well with AOPA.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
So you're part of the AOPA Learn to Fly program. Could you tell us a little bit about those 4 pillars that you guys kind of follow?
Absolutely. So there's not one right certain way to grow the pilot community. So what we've done is we've developed an umbrella program called You Can Fly, and it's based on the 4 pillars like you mentioned, and it's programs established to help people get into aviation and stay aviation at different kind of milestones of their journey. So the first is we get kids excited about aviation and teach them about opportunities through our high school STEM curriculum. So it's amazing program, free curriculum. It's in over 400 schools this past school year.
Wow.
Well over 16,000 students, and I think nearly 50,000 students served since we started working that curriculum. So we've developed the whole program. It's a turnkey operation, so teachers have everything that they need: lessons plans, presentations, material list, experiments, all this great stuff, video series. So it's an amazing program just to get kids excited and into aviation and open their eyes to opportunities where they could either just do it for fun or do it as a career. So great program there. And then the next step would be helping people learn to fly. So we've got the Flight Training Initiative. And that group was created to help create just excellent flight training experiences for everybody involved. So for student pilots, for instructors, for flight schools, we support them all through the programs that we've got created for that initiative. And then once you're a certificated pilot, access to aircraft can be a bit of a challenge. So we developed the Flying Clubs Initiative. So that is a great team of subject matter experts in that. They've created a wealth of resources, and they support people one-on-one, emails, phone calls, and tremendous set of resources they've created to help guide people to either, 1, find a flying club and join one existing, or 2, help them start one from scratch. So a great way to provide access to aircraft, make flying more affordable, but also to build that pilot community. I mean, just like Oshkosh here, it's way more fun sharing aviation with people than it is to do it on your own, and as evidenced here. So, and then we've got one more program, the Rusty Pilots program, and that's actually a series of programs in that initiative that help get pilots back up into the air after life gets in the way. So it's a pretty common occurrence that you get flying, get going, and then other things become priorities. So we've got a program help to make it easy and super fun to get back up in the air for them.
So you have so we're going to start with the high school. So, or is high school, right? Yeah. Okay. So could you tell us a little bit about that program?
Absolutely. So the AOPA Foundation High School STEM Curriculum, it's a 4-year program, and we created it from scratch. So it was our team that came together. It's pilots and instructors and school teachers as well that we've got on staff in our group, put our heads together and put in a lot of effort and created that program 1 year at a time. So it's now grades 9 through 12. So it's all 4 years of high school. And there's 2 CTE pathways there. So the first couple of years you're learning about aviation history and aviation engineering and kind of the basics, the nuts and bolts of that for freshman, sophomore year. And then junior, senior year, you get to go down one of 2 pathways for that. So one would be, as you would expect, a pilot pathway. Yeah. So you can work down that path. And the other, which is, of course, is all over the place now, is unmanned aerial systems. So the opportunity to learn about and play with and learn about opportunities with drones and unmanned aerial systems. There's 400 schools, 43 states, 16,000 students, and it's everything that someone would need to get that program up and running, and it's free. Like, that's one thing I don't think I mentioned either. It's like, yeah, we put all that time, effort into it, and have created this successful program. But the key to adoption and success is we need to make it affordable and easy for schools and school districts to use it. So we've taken on that burden, made it free for them, and the adoption has been absolutely remarkable. And it's really fun to talk to the students and the teachers about how it's changing their lives. They had no idea that aviation was even an option for them.
Yeah.
So we're really creating opportunities and helping, with the pilot shortages, but also just building the infrastructure, building the workforce for general aviation and business aviation, commercial aviation, all of it. So it's a great place to plant seeds, and it's
Absolutely.
just so amazing to hear the stories, talk to them, and see where they come from, having no idea about aviation to becoming successful, having great careers and great experiences in aviation.
That's great. Setting them up for success, early exposure to aviation,
Yeah.
all great things.
Yep, absolutely. And we also take a step further with a lot of those high school students is we've got a tremendous scholarship program. So thanks to generous donors, and there are so many of them, and the Ray Foundation as well, as we're in a position to support not only high school students, but also high school teachers, also primary certificates. So anyone that's interested in it, you don't have to be a kid or a teacher. If we hadn't been in flying, it could have been us, earning one of those scholarships there to earn their initial certificate. But we also have advanced ratings. That's one thing we get asked all the time is like, oh, what about someone like me in my position? I would have a private pilot's license, instrument rating. Could I work on my commercial? Of course, we've got some scholarships available for that. So we've given over $4.5 million awarded in scholarships since the program began. And I think it's nearly 670 scholarships out to individuals. So another piece, kind of a partner program that we have for the high school curriculum is aero clubs. So, addition to getting that STEM curriculum in school, we've got Jamie Beckett, based down in Florida, is helping identify opportunities for clubs to form. And the goal and hope would be that they would turn into high school flying clubs. But really, they can start it with anything in aviation. So, they could be with drones. It could be someone donates an airframe or parts of an airplane, and they learn how to repair or fix. Or some of these programs are actually building an airplane. They become flyable. They either turn it into a flying club for their high school, or they sell that aircraft to have opportunity to have resource for another kit or another project. So it's amazing stuff. It's teaching kids how to work together as teams, how to function in the world. They're ordering parts from aircraft sprues, things like and equipment from Sporties and all of the companies out there that support the industry. So they're learning how to work, and they're meeting people in the aviation community at the airport. The airport administrations, the local businesses. So they're learning real life skills through these programs. So not just the education, but there's so much more to it as well with the Aero Club function.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's going to steal the mic from me.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I know, personally, I went to a classical school, so I went to a smaller school, and they had a big focus on STEM, but aviation was never mentioned. And nobody there had any idea. I don't think even the teachers had any idea. I took a teacher's kid for a plane ride once I became a CFI. It's one of those things that it seems so obscure, especially if you're like in the realm of like doctors and lawyers and all that stuff. Those are like the common careers, and that if you're really excel in STEM, but really we need everybody.
So let's talk about the Learning to Fly program, where you guys are helping people through that journey.
Sure.
Talk to us about that a bit.
Yeah, so our flight training initiative, we've got really two primary programs that we're working on right now with that. One is the Flight Training Experience Survey and Awards, and what that does is it gives people that have been getting flight training, so the students, it gives them an opportunity to do a survey, evaluate their flight training providers, their instructors and their flight school, and that provides some very valuable feedback for those instructors in school so they can learn best practices, find out where they've been doing really well for tri-motor. What a great distraction. I love it. There's nothing like being at OSH. We're working right now. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
How good is this guy? I love it. So it provides them that feedback. Oh, another one, of course. Of course. Why have one Ford tri-motor fly by when you can have two?
Yeah.
I love it. This place is great. So the flight training experience survey and awards. So it gives the flight schools and instructors the opportunity to learn the things that they're doing well, but also learn where there's areas of improvement, and find out about transparency and what they can be doing better so they can apply best practice to that. So we help give them that information. They get evaluated, but then we also recognize the best regionally and nationally, and we give those awards out at Redbird Migration each year. So it's a great celebration of flight training and the industry with that. And then they're able to leverage that down the road. So they're like, hey, I'm the best flight instructor or flight school, in the region or in the country. And then that helps them support their business. So we're doing our best to just come up with tools and ways to support the flight training providers, and to give them every opportunity to succeed with that. And then we also have developed the AOPA Flight Training Advantage. Now, this is a flight training program. We're looking at the success rate for student pilots, and through data have realized that about 70 to 80% of people who start flight training don't finish. And that's telling us that, all right, there's something that we're doing wrong here. There's something at least that we can be doing a little bit better with that. So what we've done, and actually Chris Moser right here is walking by. He was the one that one of our instructors. He got frustrated with the paper syllabus, that it was one size fits all, and you just follow that course, and it didn't really adapt to each student and how well they were doing. You would get to lesson 10, and we'll call that landings. And then if you don't get past that, if they're not doing well, you're stuck on that, and you just keep grinding out landings, go do 10 landings. Well, that's not a great learning environment for the student.
Right.
There's things that they are doing well. Well, we want to be able to progress them past that and learn new things. And the things that they're not doing so well, let's bring them back in and keep working on that at a manageable pace instead of just trying to, beat it into them. But, that paper syllabus training is basically the same concept and process that was used since World War II. Basically when they were set up to weed pilots out quickly, because they want to have those that have it. They've got the skills, and naturally that we take them up to success and get them flying as soon as possible. And those that aren't there, they're just going to wash them out as quick as possible. So realize that there's a better way. And then, of course, with all the technology in the world, it really should be an electronic version to use. So you've got the capability to use it anywhere, not just when you've got your books in your backpack and that type of thing. So after AOPA Flight Training Advantage, we had developed, and it's an adaptive program. So the CFI uses the iPad, has a student over there, and it's all based on the ACS tasks. So it's all the ACS tasks. We've created those, listed those, and put those in a logical flow, and then some other things too, because you need to know more than just those things to be ready for your check ride. So it puts that in a logical flow, and then the CFI would evaluate the student on that certain list of activities for the lesson, and then at the end of the lesson, based on what that student has done and how well they've done it each and every time, AFTRA's going to pick out that next set of lesson activities that they should be flying, so they're on the most efficient, effective pathway to get their initial certificate. So it's been working great. There's over 1,800 flight schools and independent CFIs that have started it. They've logged nearly 11,000 hours in the program, so we're seeing it make a difference, and we're to that point where we want to just push that needle of that 70-80% drop off and just keep getting that lower and lower and lower, because we can do a better job of getting those students to succeed and pursue their dreams in aviation.
That's great.
Yeah, so AFTRA's great, and all of the stuff that we're talking about. To find out more information, you can fly.aopa.org.
We will 100%. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes, too, in case you do forget.
Absolutely.
Or you don't have a pen handy while you're doing
There
it.
you go. There you go.
I'm sure we've all had trouble renting at some point. You mentioned that you have a program for flying clubs. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it on the head there. It's that back when I started my training, I got my certificate, my instrument rating. It was really easy for me at my flight school to just go and rent a plane. But flight training now is booming, and the planes are busy with flight training, and so the opportunities are not there to rent like they were. So to help provide access to aircraft, and also to help with the affordability, when you're sharing costs, you think about it, every time you split that cost of an airplane, it gets much more affordable for everyone involved. So we've created the Flying Clubs Initiative. So 229 clubs we've helped form, and the team has helping hundreds of others all the time. So just a great team. They've assembled. It's Steve Bateman and Drew Myers back at AOPA HQ. They have done a tremendous job of creating these resources and this guidance and giving them all the tools that if someone had any inkling of starting a flying club, we can take them right through from not knowing anything to it to really getting them set up. So it's a phenomenal set of resources and a great way to keep flying once you have your pilot's license. But also a great benefit too is being in a flying club, you're building another community.
Yep,
another
absolutely.
piece of the aviation community. It's so much fun to fly and to be around other people, excited about aviation. And flying clubs do a great job with that. So you have not only better access to aircraft, make flying more affordable, but you're creating lifelong friends and a great
absolutely.
network. And, all we need is one more excuse to be down at the airport, right?
Exactly.
So, that's it. So flying clubs has been great. Great program.
I'm a big fan of flying clubs because that's where I got started. I joined a flying club when I started learning how to fly. It's 80 members strong now, but there's a number of aircraft at our disposal. But things like that, the community that it builds is just fantastic.
Yep, that's the whole point. You got it.
Yeah, and also, with flying being as expensive let's try that again. With flying being as expensive as it is, when you split that cost and keep splitting it, it actually, to me, it sounds like it gives people opportunities to stay proficient, which is, I think, a huge problem. Everybody knows the weekend warriors. They come out once every 2 months and fly around and make the pattern a menace. So mitigating that, I think, if people have that encouragement to fly, it's like, oh, I can just book whatever. I can go on this trip. I can do, I can just do a few landings. I can snag it a part-time instructor and go, do some stuff and keep proficient. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah. That's a great point too. It's one thing to be current. It's another thing to be proficient. And absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. When flying is more affordable, it gives us all a better chance to stay proficient and to be smart, safe pilots.
So say I'm one of those pilots who life has now gotten in the way, and it's been a while, and I need to knock some rust off. You guys have a program for that too, right?
We do. Rusty Pilots Program, aptly named for that. Exactly right. That was a great segue. Thank you.
I try.
Yeah, Rusty Pilots Program. It's a scenario-based program. It's really fun. It takes you on a journey. Actually, it's a flight down in Florida.
Okay.
But you're flying through all different airspaces, and if you do a little flight in Central Florida, you experience just about everything that you could experience in aviation. In a cross-country flight. We've got a series of in-person seminars that we do. We do those all around the country. You can find those on the website. And also we do webinars each quarter. And then we also have an online course. So great ways for people to kind of knock the rust off, get back into it. It reminds people of the things that they've already known, good refreshers, things like airspace and procedures, all the way through regulations, things like that, but also stuff that may have changed since they flew last. So it's like aviation is a constantly evolving entity, and we stay on top of that, keep updating it, so it's always a fresh current course, and people are loving it. And over 12,000 have gotten back into the left seat because of the Rusty Pilot. So it's
That's great.
Making that community, that flying aviation community, stronger. Yeah, helping keep the pilots in the air for sure. And actually, we've done another one. We've got a course that we've created, a webinar so far. It's called Back to Your Roots.
Okay.
We've designed that for professional pilots. Oftentimes, people get their certificates, they move up, they become professional pilots, and then they lose touch with general aviation. That's where it all started. So we want to rekindle that for those and help get them back into it, because for the same thing, they're like, wow, we're used to flying in the system and flying with the airlines and don't really remember what it is. And actually, we've heard from professional pilots that that's a bit intimidating to get back down and fly a Cessna, Piper, or experimental aircraft and just take tours around the pattern, because they don't really remember how to do it. They're so accustomed to flying it. So we've developed this webinar series, and we're really excited to share that. Later this year, we're going to launch an online course as well, which makes sense for professional pilots because they'll be able to do that whenever, hotel room, anywhere. You could do it on your phone, tablet, computer, wherever you're at, and a great refresher course there just to help support pilots wherever they are in their aviation journey.
Great.
That's awesome. I hope that's I think that's really neat.
We do too, and we are so privileged and grateful to be able to help support aviation dreams. We're passionate about aviation. We love it. We've all got different experiences with the You Can Fly group and the AOPA Foundation and AOPA, but we have a sincere love for general aviation, and even more, love sharing that with others and providing opportunities for people to, one, know about it, open their eyes to opportunities there, and then support them every step of the way through the programs. And again, everything that we do is donor funded. So there's not a thing that the You Can Fly programs do that's funded through member dues with AOPA. So, just like us, we're passionate and love aviation. So are so many people out in the community, and they want to pass that legacy on. So we're so grateful for the donors that make that possible. Right.
I'll be honest with you. Even though we're trying to do like a professional like podcast type of thing, I keep looking at airplanes taking off. I cannot help it.
This is the greatest office in the world
right
here.
I'm sure at some point when I edit this, or I might even just leave it in, people are going to see me going like that over and over again, looking at airplanes. Oh, airplane! Oh, there's another one. They're everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Sorry, go ahead, Maddie.
I forgive you. So you said, it's donor funded, which is fantastic. It's awesome that, you guys and all your donors are so passionate about this. So if one of our listeners is wanting to get involved in that way, how would you suggest that you do that?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, just for all the information about our programs, as we mentioned, youcanfly.aopa.org. Let's get right to the foundation for those opportunities to give and support and to continue that legacy. It's foundation.aopa.org. Super easy, and it doesn't matter what amount. Every little bit makes a difference, and it's going to change a life.
Is there anything else you want to cover about it that we haven't talked about that we missed?
This was great. I mean, great opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's super fun, and yeah, we've got it covered.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking to us and everyone out there about your programs and how they can get involved, especially the foundation part to give to these programs and help to inspire others to get involved in aviation or get back on the horse. So thanks so much, Dan. We appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been a blast. Great to meet you both and great to spend time. And now we get to go hang out and have fun at OSH.
Yeah, absolutely. Airplanes. All right. Thanks, Dan.
Oh, you have
I have a mic. You can clip that if you want, unless you want to hold them.
No, I want to hold this. Right. I want to show the world that I made this and I'm proud of it. I'm giving this as much attention as it possibly can have.
Video bloopers are going to be a lot of fun. Oh, yeah. All right, so this has been a fascinating episode. We've learned some more about AOPA and some of the programs that are available and how our listeners can go ahead and access some of that stuff.
Yeah, it's been really great having everybody on, and we can't wait to see you guys get involved with AOPA and taking advantage of their awesome resources.
So they mentioned a lot of different resources and places that you can go for information. All the stuff we're going to put in the show notes and the video description, so you can check all of that out and get involved however you feel necessary with AOPA.
We'd like to extend a very special thanks to Dan, Cade, and Kyle, who graciously came on to talk to us on this segment of the Flying Midwest podcast.
Yeah, it's been just a blast being at Oshkosh in general, but the help and support that AOPA has given us, as well as just giving us their time and the information they're able to provide for our listeners, has been really great.
Yeah. And don't forget, AOPA is one of the few that advocate for us in the government and in just overall in aviation. So if you can support them, please do. They do a lot for us as pilots.
All right, so I think we're going to be off to our next thing. You won't see it in this episode because we're breaking these up. Obviously, tons of content from Oshkosh that, frankly, I don't even know where I'm going to start to edit this stuff. But we are going to have a ton of Oshkosh content to bring you over the next several weeks. So stay tuned to all of our media, the social media, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel for videos like this.
Yeah. And don't forget, we have a Patreon, so
we do.
Become a patron today, and you can see more of our shenanigans and some extra stuff from us.
All right, thanks so much for joining us on this fun and exciting episode of the Flying Midwest podcast, live from Oshkosh.
And until next time,
see ya.
See ya.
Flight Chef 536, contact Minneapolis Center 132.35 today.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Flying Midwest podcast. Until next time, podcast service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. Good day.
Ohio and Michigan, native Ohio. I really don't like to say Michigan too much, because if I say Michigan too much, I feel like they owe us something.
Yeah, we
So,
don't need that.
–
We haven't knocked on Michigan for a while, so
yeah, we haven't. Yeah, Michigan.
Okay.
We just leave the M off.
I still think that the fact that Wisconsin hasn't taken over the Upper Peninsula tells me everything I need to know about this state.
We could do a dual attack.
Yeah.
Ohio and Wisconsin.
Ohio gets the
Yeah.
main part, and then Wisconsin can take what's rightfully theirs
Yeah.
of the UP.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we already have Toledo. So
Okay.
the War of 1812, Battle
yeah,
of Toledo, Oliver Hazard Perry. I know way too much about Ohio history. Anyway, back to the legislative update.
Where am I supposed to go from here? Okay.
Maybe you could ask him.
Yeah, this is a
tell us
bad
about
transition.
the 4 pillars of their program.
So we hear. Let's try that again.
We hear
We
lots
hear
of-
sometimes.
That's great. That's a lot of good programs you guys have. That I lost my train of thought. Day 4.
Yeah, I know. It's like day 4, and then it's only day 4.
Yeah. Let me go like that, and I'll try again.
Yeah.